Please welcome up New York Times' Matthew Ericson.
Thanks, Brady. It's great to be here and very excited to see all of you turning out to see what's new with kind of mapping the internet. And what I want to talk a little bit about today is how we at the Times are really trying to push forward what we're doing with interactive maps in helping readers understand the relationships between geography and the news. First, the 30-second introduction to the graphics department. This is us. About a year and a half ago, when the Simpsons character creator was floating around, we have a staff of about 30 graphics editors who are a mix of cartographers, artists, reporters, designers, journalists, and recently in the last couple of years, Flash developers. And so for kind of maps and what we want to do with maps on the internet to help explain the news, there's really three things that we want to focus on. I'm going to go through election night and how we kind of attack those three areas. First thing we want to do is provide spatial clarity as to what's happening in the news around you. Where's things going on? Where's the nearest homicide to your house? Where are homes being foreclosed upon? Or on election night, what's going on in each state? Who's won each state? Who's leading each state? And what's happening in my county? The Times has a long history of using maps to explain the news in print. This is the very first election map that I was able to find, published the day after the election in 1896, going back through our archives, showing which states voted for McKinley, which states voted for Bryan. A little unsophisticated. Key is a little hard to read, way up in the top there in that kind of crazy little type. And the geography is a little, obviously, hand-drawn. 1932, we're getting a little bit better. Getting a little more sophisticated. We've got some cross-hatching now. We've got some vertical lines going on. And what I find most interesting is these states which we don't have election results for, Oregon and Michigan, are labeled as doubtful. And so to jump forward 75 years, we'll go to what we were doing in 2008. Starting at 6:30 at night, results start coming in. We have some maps. We have some states lighting up on the map. Kentucky's been called. Vermont's been called. We switch to a map that shows what's coming in all across the counties. 10 p.m., more states, polls closed. More states been called. 10:30, Obama's inching closer to the total. Of 11 o'clock, only about 30 away. 11:17 p.m., he's won. Midnight, 12:30, 1 o'clock. And so to go back to the 10 o'clock view of the map, sort of when we set out to design the front page or the home page of the Times for election night, sort of the first question that came up is like, how do we want to design this so that it's clear what is going on to readers so that they have a very clear view of what's happening. Switch here to the... And what we really wanted to do, this is the actual live graphic, is just present a very clear result. People could see the electoral count up in the top left corner. If you want to see what was happening in the states, the result in the state, rollover state, clear display of states that have been won, states that were leading. This map, obviously now that we're past the election, everyone's been won. And also, as results are coming in, one of the questions people always had was, all right, my state just closed, somebody's leading, who's winning where? And we wanted to give readers the ability to zoom in on their state and see the results in their county and see which counties hadn't reported results yet, which ones had. So the first thing we're going to do on the homepage is be very clear about what was going on election night so readers could really see it for themselves and understand who was winning and who was losing. The second thing we really try and focus on doing is moving beyond just providing that spatial information, the ability to look up a certain point or a certain state or a certain county and see what the information is. But we want to give readers the tools to really explore and understand the geographic patterns that are present in the news. And the first thing right here is this is our display of election results. And one of the things as we were just coming up with ideas for like, how do we want to present our results is obviously we're going to have a map. But we want to think, are there ways that we can show the geographic results that go beyond just the map and really help organize the news, organize the results in a little bit easier to understand way, or a way that's easier to pick out the patterns. And so this is what we called the big board, which is just a tabular display of the results. But what we wanted to do is group the states by which ones were the battleground states, which ones was Obama expected to win narrowly, which ones were McCain expected to win narrowly, so that as results started coming in, you could see if most of the battleground states were turning blue and McCain wasn't winning any of those states that were maybe leaning Obama, that way you could tell early on, maybe it's a better night for Obama than we thought. Or if the opposite happened, McCain was picking up battleground states in this column and some of the Obama states, then actually maybe a better night for McCain. So we want to think, like, are there better ways beyond just the map that lets explain the news? We're also very cognizant of the forms that we use in displaying election results. This is a map showing how every county in the US voted, which is a great map. It handles like one of the questions that you have. It's like, all right, I want to see how my county voted. I can go to the map. I can roll over my county. I can click to zoom in. I can see how it voted. But every form you choose also has some inherent like pros and cons. This one, the pro, is that it shows you how all the counties voted. The con is that in some ways it's not the greatest way of representing the actual election results. This was a 2008 popular vote. Obama won 68 million votes, McCain 59 million. But when you actually look at that map, the amount of red and blue shown on that map, Obama, there's only about 850,000 square miles of blue. The map is more than 2 million square miles of red. So you get this very kind of different visual impression from looking at the map. So we looked at a number of different ways that we could do this, or like ways that we could show the election map that sort of reflected some of these distinctions. And one of the things we did, which we did this map, which we call the bubble map, it shows the margin of victory in each county. And so you can see those like unpopulated areas out in the west have tiny little red circles, while the big urban areas have pretty big blue circles. So if you visually summed up, not that you could do this, if you visually summed up all of the blue and red on this map, you'd get something that's more proportional to the actual margin of victory. This also lets people kind of see more interesting patterns, like, or more subtle patterns in some of the results. We'll zoom into Indiana. This is the 2008 results in Indiana, which for the first time in years went from a red state to a blue state. And you see the margin of victory pretty big in Indianapolis, pretty big in some of the areas up in the northwest corner of the state near the Chicago suburbs, but still a lot of smaller red circles. So the ability to use this form to compare to, say, 2004, which you could do with a slider over on the left, that's the 2004 election results. And you can see by flipping between the two, the red circles, many of the counties still stay red, so they would have still shown up as red on a normal chloropleth map. But they all shrink slightly when you go to 2008 and you really see the areas where Obama either whittled away at the margins in the Republican counties or really picked up in the urban areas. One other thing we want to do is obviously you sort of want to do that comparison for the whole nation to see what the patterns were in the shift overall. And if you try to do that kind of shift back and forth with a slider yourself, it'd be hard to do for 3,000 counties, trying to visually keep track of all of those in your head, like which ones got bigger, which ones got smaller. So we put together a voting shifts map that really did that calculation for you. So this map doesn't actually show who won in each county, but what it shows is, did the county shift more Republican or more Democratic than the previous election? And you see all across the nation, aside from one swath through Kentucky and Tennessee and Arkansas, and also a little bit in Arizona, McCain's home state, the whole nation shifted more Democratic, while that swath sort of went more Republican. And so this kind of let people see, all right, how has the nation changed? What's the pattern going on there? And then the final thing we did to really let people play with the patterns is what we call the Electoral Explorer, which basically let you take and filter your election results by different demographic variables. If you want to see what the vote was in counties with a large, high population density, you just on the fly do that. Ones with a low population density, McCain won. and for any number of demographic variables. And finally, the third thing that we wanted to really try and do, and this is something that really goes to the heart of what we sort of do as journalists every day, is find ways to use the maps to tell stories. Because that's really what a lot of people want to know is it's great to put all this data on a map. It's great to let them explore it and like dig through the patterns for themselves. But as journalists, we have a staff of hundreds of people at times who have covered the election in one way or the other over the past 4 years. And we spend a lot of time looking at election data. So what we really want to do is use that expertise and say, all right, what's interesting? And all that stuff we put up, what are the interesting stories that come out of it? And so for the day after the election, we put together basically this presentation for the homepage that lets you step through that election map. Like, we've gone through it, we've looked at what's interesting to us, and here's what we found, and here's the story of the election. This year, only 2% of the nation's counties voted more Republican. The rest of the nation shifted more Democratic. Where McCain won, where Obama won. And really the key to the election, the 9 states that Obama won that Kerry had lost. And so now we're going to go beyond, okay, what was important in those 9 states, what shifted the election, and move beyond just results data, but to exit poll data that let you see in Indiana, it was the white voters who actually shifted towards Obama, whereas in Ohio, it was the urban voters who had the biggest shift. Virginia, it was rural voters had one of the largest shift, and North Carolina, suburban voters were the ones that shifted. And really kind of leverage that expertise that the Times journalists sort of bring to the table in looking at, okay, what's interesting about these results? Why did the election swing that way? It's also interesting, just in terms of storytelling, is really seeing how some of the maps we did kind of spread around the internet. This is one blog post that kind of mashed up our election results map with cotton plantations from the 1860s. You can go read the whole post there about sort of the reasons behind that. But it's interesting to see other people kind of like running with the data and finding ways to tell the stories themselves. And finally, this is Where 2.0, a quick little bit about the technology we use for the maps and why we go that way. We've done a lot of development over the last couple of years of our own in-house classes for mapping in Flash. Matthew Block, who's one of our cartographers and a great programmer, has built a whole library so that for very data-driven maps, we can take things like shape files, convert them to a format that Flash can read, and really use those shape files on the fly. We've done some work with Google Maps, and Google Maps is great, but really we found a lot of what we want to do is really kind of data maps, where the important thing is the data, and you don't really care as much about the road networks underneath. But we're also very excited about, we've been doing some work with the Google Maps recently. We're sort of trying to mash up sort of the vector-based data maps with the Google Maps, because the Google Maps are great for things when you get down to the street level. This is a map we just did of foreclosures in the New York region, where zoomed out you see a heat map of the areas with the highest foreclosure rates. But then readers can actually take and zoom in to a neighborhood, and as they zoom in, we transition from a very data-driven map to a street map from Google that lets us actually take and plot out where all those foreclosures are so readers can see on their street how far is it to the next foreclosure. In terms of the actual data feed that we use to get election maps, we went with a very simple data feed in many ways. We powered the maps with tab-delimited text files. And we had a whole process set up on election night that would FTP data grab data via FTP from the Associated Press, who provides the election results. We'd process it all in the house, and because we didn't want any possible problems with database hangups or so forth on election night, we're getting millions of hits that night, takes and basically publishes out every 2 minutes several hundred new HTML pages to the website and a couple dozen tab-delimited text files that power the maps. And we also spent a lot of time working on optimization to optimize the maps so that they were small enough and compact enough and operated fast enough for our readers. Mapshaper.org, written by Matthew Block, one of our cartographers, lets you take and simplify the maps down so that they get file size, and we used as much as we could to really shrink the stuff down, and make it operate smoothly. And so that, in 15 minutes, is election maps at the Times.